and I didn't want to be a single mother. I had also lost my dad when I was 22 years old. He died of a heart attack. Which there's a story about that too, understanding that what would happen or whatever. And I know it's completely off subject, but when he died, I actually saw his spirit, his white orb, and he gave me and my boyfriend a hug.
Nice.
And he was saying goodbye. Yes, because I was worried. I was worried for him, like, where's my dad going?
Yeah.
But he hugged me, and I talked to Will outside the hospital, and I said, I felt like my dad was hugging me. He said, I felt it too. I said, you did? So I was like, thank you, and he's not a spiritual person at all.
That's not really off subject. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So I just want to encourage people that they can see when they're gone or out of their body, they are there. They can see what you think and see and everything. So,
right.
And so after all of everything that was happening, how I saw myself, he said, are you ready? And I was like, wish me luck. and I turned, because they said down the way there will be a guide waiting for me, and I jump in that wormhole, and I was like, okay. So I said, wish me luck. And I turned around and I said, so I just go down there. And when I turned back, it was gone. Nobody was there. It was like I was outside the void. Now I didn't know that's what it's called until recently, because I watch NDEs and stuff. I'm like, the void, I wonder if that's like, because it was complete nothingness.
Yeah.
I couldn't go back to wherever I was. It was so weird. There was no choice but to go down the plank. It literally was like a plank. It was made of pure white light. And I felt like if I didn't stay on it, I would fall off into space somewhere. And I didn't want to do that because at least I knew where I was going. I wasn't lost. One of my fears is being completely alone. I didn't want that. So I approached the guide, and I remember them being taller than me. And I said, so I just jumped down there? And they said yes. And they said, I think it was a male. He said he'd be in after me. And I was like, okay. And they told me, Jesus had told me when I was looking at the technology that I would never be alone and I could always connect to them. And I was like, but how do I know? Because I had come from Earth, I remembered not being connected, but in this life, I am absolutely connected. But anyway, I asked the guide, so I jumped down there. The thing is, the wormhole was huge. You know those water park things where you go on a tube and it's like you whirl around and then you go into a hole. Yeah. It's just like that. And it was really big in front of me, but there was some space between the pier and the wormhole. And so I was worried about missing. Like, if I jump straight down, I'm going to miss and go into space and be nowhere. And I don't like that. He said, you won't miss. And I was like, okay. So I'm thinking maybe because he said that, there's a vacuum or something. Like,
your guide
if I
said
jump,
you won't miss, or Jesus?
Yeah,
Yeshua?
Okay. Yeah, a guide.
Your guide.
Yeah. At this, when I said, wish me luck, Jesus was back there. And when I went to go see him again, that's when I didn't see Jesus anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. And then I'll wake up as a human. And he said, yes. And I was like, okay, I guess I better go. Because I knew there was nothing else to do. And I knew that they would be in after me. So I jumped off the pier, and I made sure to jump far enough to get in that center because I didn't want to miss. But as I was falling, it got bigger. It was like bigger than I thought. I was like, oh, wow. Because I'm thinking this is like a small little thing I'm jumping into. No, it's like huge. So as I'm falling into it, the hole, though, is getting smaller and smaller. And so I'm feeling heavier and tired. And I'm like, I'm on a mission. I'm tired. I'm going to sleep. And I fell asleep. And I woke up inside my mom.
Wow.
And yeah. And I was like, I made it. And I was able to move.
So like, you still had memories. You still had memories. Yes. Okay.
Yes. And I could still move. And I opened and closed my hands, and I looked at him, and I'm like, how many fingers? 1, 2, 3. I counted. And I was like, okay, no deformities. And then I was like, oh crap, I can't see my feet. I couldn't see past my knees. And I'm like, I can't see. And I wiggled, and I'm like, okay, 2 feet. I feel toes. Oh yeah. And Jesus didn't tell me about deformities, so I'm fine. I literally remember. And it was pink inside. And I literally could move. And I remember crossing my legs a lot. And mom said I did that because I remembered that. And even my daughter did too in the womb. When I saw her image, my mom said, "You used to do that." And I was like, "I remember." So but I was big enough that I had room, I had space. So I don't really know how big I was, but I'm guessing 3 or 4 months in the womb
Mm.
because I remember seeing my fingers and opening and closing and being like, okay, I'm in here. Okay. But feeling really tired. So every time I would wake up, oh, I'm still not born yet. Oh, but it's getting smaller in here. Like it was getting smaller and smaller each time I woke up. And it
Still
didn't happen
growing, yeah.
often. Yeah, yeah. But then the last time I ended up waking up and I'm like, I'm on a mission, leave me alone. Because people were waking me up and I didn't want to wake up. And then I was like, oh, I'm being born. Oh, I'm being born. And I was like, oh God, oh God. Like I was kind of afraid. And I remember them getting my head out and I'm like, oh God, I can't see. And then they put drops in my eyes. I'm like, now you made it worse. Like I'm remembering thinking these things. And I'm like, they can't understand me. They can't hear me. This is torture. This is horrible. And then they put something in my throat and I think they were getting the amniotic fluid out. And I was like, I didn't
Yeah.
like that. Sorry, I'm grabbing. um, but when they got me out, they put me on the scale. And I'm like, why is nobody with me? Why am I? This is nothing like Jesus showed me. This is what is this nonsense? Like I'm freezing cold. It's bright in here. I don't like this. Where's the mother? Like I was just really upset. And I had also lost all control because when I was in the womb, when I first got there, I could go like this and look at my hands and nod and be okay. I could do all that. Now I can't do anything. I'm trying to
Mm.
wipe my eyes. I don't remember how to do that. Oh God. Like I can't, I have no control now. And it infuriated me. My mom said I was the loudest baby. And I'm like, yes, I know. Because I was mad. I'm like mad because I'm cold and this is not what Jesus showed me, you know? Uh, so
You got duped.
oh yeah, that's how I felt. Seriously. And so they finally wrapped me in a blanket and I'm like, about time here, and then I at least felt warm. And then they handed me to my mother, which I didn't recognize at first because I'm still like my eyes are still blurry, but I'm like trying to look at her and I'm like, she doesn't really look like the woman by the sink. And then I heard her voice. I'm like, oh, that is the mother. And of course, which is awful, I remember being breastfed, which I'm like, oh God, I literally was embarrassed because I'm thinking, like, this is horrible. I'm being breastfed. And I'm like, well, they think I'm a baby. So it won't matter, like it's natural. And I was like, and I'm hungry anyway, and what else can I do? So
That's
yeah,
funny.
I remember that though. Like I totally
Wow.
remember that. But then as time went on, I started to forget. But I kept
Mm.
remember like every time I woke up, I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission. And then it would kind of go away. But then that's when my mom, as a child, saying Jesus loves me. And I was like, wait a minute. I know Jesus. How do you know Jesus? And like, oh, I'm here for a reason. But then of course it went away. Just like
Yeah.
when I said about when I was a kid and I saw the sermon. So memories like that brought me back.
Right. Wow.
But
That's
that's my experience.
that is crazy. That's fascinating.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's so many
Hmm.
questions uh,
Sure.
and comments. One question that comes to mind is, and if you did share this, I'm sorry I don't remember it, but what caused you to start remembering your past life? Because
Oh,
it
I
kind of
had
started with
images.
that. Okay.
Sure. I had images of that. It was like I knew I had been married before, but obviously
Okay.
I'm a child. I actually saw him in the sky when I was a kid. Like the
So
memory.
when you were a child is when you started remembering your past life, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I remember the dark-haired man and he was my husband. I wonder if I'm going to find a man like that now. Like I was a 40-year-old woman as a 5-year-old kid. I was literally into boys and everything else. Like I wanted a family. I don't know. I think it's because of my previous life. And
So
I
it was,
also,
I was just gonna say,
I
so it was that, and it was still that, because you didn't really spend a lot of time in between lives, it sounds like.
no,
That
no,
you were
not at
there, you
all.
had a conversation and were showing your next life, and and it didn't take that long. You didn't take a very big break between lives. So your previous experience was still pretty, was still with you when you came back. I mean, I know a lot of children do remember their lifetimes as a
Yeah.
child, and that,
Hmm.
and I understand it also can be because of a previous lifetime that is still with them, which they didn't spend a lot of time in between lives so that they could heal
Yeah.
what the previous life. Is that
Yes.
does that sound right?
Yes. Yes. And I also think that I had a lot of that life's baggage with me because in
Right.
relationship after relationship, it seemed to play out very similar.
Okay.
Um, it was like, things aren't going right. They may or may not be cheating, but I'm trying to control the situation. You got to stay with me, kind of thing.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
it happened a lot until I ended up being, I don't care about men anymore. I could live alone the rest of my life and I'd be good.
Hmm. So you feel
Um,
so okay, I'm trying to understand this. So um you came back very quickly because I mean, I know that we're so multidimensional. There's all kinds of reasons why we, our soul is
yeah,
doing
but
things.
I did need to rush for some reason. They were like, you need to
Okay.
get going. And
Did
I was like,
he did
okay.
he explain why?
I felt it was because I would be born, like 1985 was coming. Like there is a timing to it, and I don't know how or why, but I just knew I had to get going.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And that with my experience as well, that there was some timing there with
Yes,
yeah.
that's
Um
cool.
yeah, totally. So that makes sense. But and so it had to be, timing wise, you had to come back pretty quickly to clear things up from your last life is basically kind
Yes.
of kind of what you're saying, or what he
Yeah.
was helping you with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. uh, uh,
Yes.
it's it's funny how I was gonna say something about the children with Yeshua, with
Hmm.
Jesus. You mentioned something about, oops, messed up my screen here. Okay. With the kids. Did you say something about you saw kids with Jesus? Or there was some
Yeah,
children with,
they were my future children
oh,
for
okay.
this incarnation.
Okay.
So he was like introducing me to a few people who were coming with me and why they were coming.
Okay. So they were your future children.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And Kirsten was supposed to be able to help me out, which she does in this life. Lauren and Braden were just here for the ride. It's just sort of because of consequences of being a human being,
Gotcha.
of doing wrong things, like
Okay.
staying in a bad relationship and not being
Okay.
married.
Yeah, and how was, right, or just not, is that really considered bad, or just not maybe living out a life plan like we had intended,
Yeah,
kind of thing?
not living out a
Not
life plan.
not finishing what we had wanted to
Yes.
do. Okay.
Yes.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Okay.
It
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And I'm not meaning to condescend anybody or anything like that. It's just not what I had planned. And I
Right.
remember this.
Your
So
life plan. Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah, and I
like I
didn't.
said, I do love my children and I would never, like, I'm telling you, even if I could go back in time and say, hey, leave that guy, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it because I love
So,
I love them.
oh, of course, of course, yeah. So I thought it was interesting about the weed thing, and
Hmm.
what what I've learned working with plant medicine and things like that, which I've done as well, is just a little bit that weed, or what we want to call cannabis, is a plant
Yeah.
medicine, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So when we abuse it is when it becomes like a drug. Does that make
Yes.
sense? Okay.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's meant to help us heal, as long as we're using it in maybe like the indigenous people in the our four, uh fathers did, or any, well, not maybe, depends on our forefathers, but that indigenous people had used cannabis for that reason, to heal. Because
Yeah.
does that make sense?
It does make sense. I do know that when I was on it though, like the feeling went from being I was peaceful with Jesus, everything was going great, to all of a sudden I felt like demons were around me,
Okay.
like little imps. Now I've
So,
actually seen imps in real life.
mhm,
So that's what I felt were around me.
okay. Yeah. So it was bringing that experience. I've also, I was wondering about this too, that, I had a experience myself with drugs and alcohol because I was a partier and I was doing that type of thing
Hmm.
before my NDE. And I saw a parallel split where my ex-boyfriend and I had a big fight
Hmm.
and it got really ugly, and I saw a split where I and he went down a path that was really bad for us. And
Hmm.
that's when I made the decision to, or I had the courage and made the decision to leave that relationship rather than
Wow.
go down that, stay in
Yes.
that mode of drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. So
Yes.
that's
So we
interesting
had
that you
similar,
mentioned that.
yes. Yes. Because it sounds exactly like what I saw. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't change, that would happen, but it didn't end up happening. It was like a premonition, so to speak, and you
Right.
remembered it. So
Right.
it's almost like you were warned of that before you were born, maybe.
I
But I mean,
was,
it sounds
yeah.
very similar. Yes.
Yeah, and it was, well, I didn't remember it as pre-birth. I remembered it during, what I considered was my life review in reflection after my NDE kind of thing.
Okay. Okay.
I guess I don't know, since time is happening all at once, which is, how do you
I
put
know.
that? How do you put your finger on it? But one thing I also, remembered was that as I was reflecting on that and in my meditations, and Yeshua was working with me on it, that he helped me bring, because she died. He and my in that timeline, my ex ended up murdering me,
Oh
because it
my God.
got so bad.
Wow.
Yeah, it got so bad, and so I had he helped me bring her in because she was, fragmented, that timeline,
Yeah.
and bring in
Wow.
lots of parallel realities that were, that I had created along the way that
Yes.
weren't so good, that needed help
Yep.
bringing
Hmm.
that. Yeah. Uh, and help him too,
Yes.
because that was part of my deal. But that's
Yeah.
interesting.
And that reminded me, there was a part where I had been still was like, I don't want to go. I don't really want to go. And he said, I need you to.
Yeah.
But when he said that, it felt like, okay. And then he said, for some reason, he said, you're the only one that can do it.
Mm,
And I was like, "Mm."
mm,
And this was back when I was looking at the holographic earth with the lights. And I'm like, like I see those lights and I see I'm one of them. And I was like, you do need me to do it, and you know I will do it. You know I'll tell everybody. You know I will. I'll tell everybody. You know I'm me. I don't care. And that is kind of how I am. Like I will tell the truth. Like I want things to be known,
yeah.
and for some reason he just needed me to do that. But I also asked him in that moment. Um, I said, "What's the point of that life?" And he said, "To learn how to love and to learn to love." And I was like, that
Mm.
seems silly though. Like, what? I thought I'm supposed to do something
I know.
amazing,
We think that,
but
don't
I'm
we?
just, yeah, but I'm just supposed to love people. That's it. Okay. Um,
Love ourselves. Love ourselves.
yes.
Yeah, because a lot of
And
stuff
that's the
gets in
thing.
the way.
I don't think I did very much in that last life, even though, I was selfish, I had money, I was successful, and I wanted that image. I am too good to have a husband that's cheating on me. Knock it
Hmm.
off. Like I,
Hmm.
I was like that big time.
Yeah.
Um, I also wanted to say that the little things in life really matter. Um, I remember in my first life review seeing little things happen that meant so much. Like it's kind of like the ripple effect. When I've seen other people talk about it in near death experiences, I'm like, that's what that is. Because I just didn't know, I didn't have a coined term for it, but it's the ripple effect when you do little things and they make a big wave.
Right.
of love toward other
Right.
people. It's the little things that matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. That's beautiful.
And the other thing I wanted to say was
Uh-huh.
Jesus is not as complicated as the Bible makes him to be. He's not. And I can't say why or how, but I just know that. I know it from memory and the way he is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I think I feel like I understand what you're saying, because it's he is very matter of fact with me
oh
too, but
yeah.
he works with me with a lot of humor. I need humor, and that's how he works with me, with a lot of
I
humor.
could see that. Yeah, I could totally see that. He is short to the point, but also like in the middle of my rant, you'll like the mother. What? Like but I also noticed that he needed my permission to go along with it. Like
Yeah,
every time he's like, "Would you like to see?" And I'm like, "Sure." So then we go to Earth, and then when we're there, um, are you ready to go back? And I
yeah,
said yes. And so he needs my permission every time. To
right,
We have to agree with him. We do have free will in some way.
right.
So
Yeah, and I remember that about my NDE too, is I needed to I made a deal with him when I came back, because uh I said, okay, but you have to be with me and walk with me.
I
I have
said
to
the
know you.
same.
Did you? Yes, I have to know you
Yes,
consciously,
yes. I
and
said I
I
said I
need to
need
know
you
you.
with me.
Yes,
Yes.
totally.
That's when he was showing me the cell phone. I need you with me. I need to know that you're there. And he said I will be there. And so I said okay.
Boom. And I
So
wanted, that's
that's
another thing I
awesome.
wanted to share. I know, isn't it? I know, I love that.
Hmm.
And because we want to, because when you're with him there, it's like I want to be with you all the time, and I want you
Yes, you
here.
don't want to leave. You don't want to
Oh,
leave at all.
yeah, I want you here. And I love what he said. There's no tears in heaven. That's awesome.
Yes, there are
Yeah,
no tears in heaven.
there are no tears in heaven. Yeah.
Yep. Hmm.
Um, the cell phone thing, that's so funny because, and this was, well, you remember this
Oh
before.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because I was born in 1985. So before that, there were no cell phones at all.
Yeah.
Like that,
Yeah.
I was like, "What is this? Wow!" And you can text people. He showed me, and I was like, "So I can communicate with you guys?" Like I remember being kind of told at that point that I'd have gifts, um, kind of like psychic reading, whatever.
Abilities.
But
Yeah.
here,
Mhm.
yes, and I remember when I had these experiences and this memory coming through, I went to the church with it, and they they didn't accept it at all. Like they were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's demonic memories," and I was like, "Oh my god!" So I was quiet for a while because I was afraid. I didn't know if they were demonic implanted memories or not. So I did a lot of research on near death experiences, and I'm like, "But that sounds like me. How could it be a demonic implant if somebody else experienced it?"
Yeah.
And so it just made me feel a lot better about what happened to me, about reincarnation,
Hmm.
all of it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I know. I
Yes.
didn't talk about mine for at least 10 years either, because
Hmm.
people didn't understand it. This was in 2001. But I mean, people were starting to talk about NDEs, but I didn't know it. I didn't, I'm just like, how can I tell people? I talked about it to my sister, and she because we're close. But I wanted to talk about the cell phone because there was a time 20 years ago when I first started working with the Ash, where I was in my room, which was my classroom, and it was before touch screens and cell phones and things like that. And I could see he projected to me like a whiteboard. It'd be like a
Uh-huh.
computer screen, but it was as big as it was on the wall. And he had showed me there was a gauge on it. And he said, okay, listen to your thoughts. We're going to monitor your thoughts together. And any thought that came in, it would show up on the gauge from 1 to 10, or 1 to 100, or whatever, 5 being in the middle. If it was a
Hmm.
negative thought, it would show up on the gauge. And if it was below 5, he'd swipe it off the screen.
Wow.
It would show up and he'd swipe it. If it was a positive thought, he'd say, okay, we can keep that. You can keep that thought. But if it was negative, he'd swipe it. And I had never seen anything about
Being
swiping
able to swipe
screens.
things away. Yeah. Hmm. Yes. So it was like an actual thing in front of you that you actually saw when Jesus was showing this, or was it in a vision or
It was
something?
in my mind's eye, but I was looking, but my eyes were open. So I could, it
Okay,
was, if that makes any sense, it
that
was there, but it
yes.
might as well have been in the room with me because I could see it very clearly.
That is so interesting to me. Now, here's something that happened to me. It was like September, I believe September 22nd of 2020. Um, I went to bed and I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a screen in front of me. And but it was angled kind of like a futuristic like it you see in movies,
Mm-hmm.
and it was made of pure light, and I was like, what is this? Now, in the middle of it was a woman talking. I'm assuming it was a woman. Didn't look human at all, though. And she had a crown and she was kind of blurry. The whole thing was a bit blurry. There was a green 22 up in the top corner. There was letters that didn't look human at all. And there was letters that were scrolling up continuously. And I literally was able to look at this screen and just study it. And I'm like, what is this? There was no sound though. And I tried to get away from it because I'm like, what is going on? And it followed me, and I literally stared at it even better, and then it pixelated out, and I was like, what was that? Because it doesn't
Wow.
make I don't
Yeah.
even know what it I still don't know what it was because but I looked up light language. So I was like, oh, it must have been light language. And I
Yeah.
had a feeling that this person was me though.
Yeah.
Um, but she had either I think it was no nose, but she had eyes and a mouth, and she was like talking, but it was quiet. So it was like, I don't know what she was saying, but her head stayed still. She had a crown. The 22 was there in green. Now 22 shows up a lot in my life, so I don't know if that's something to do with me. I'm a life
Mm-hmm.
path 9 though,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know what it means. But when you said the screen thing, I was like, oh, that
Right.
reminds me.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of holographic screens in my visions and in my out of body experiences and stuff like that since then. And yeah, so that was that was really cool. What else?
Yes.
It's so it's interesting that the when you went to see your family and they began fighting,
Yeah.
that okay, that you got sucked back, right? And
Yes.
so
Yes.
what happened there again? And you said, why are they? Oh, you didn't understand why. That's what I wanted to ask you. You understand? You were thinking about from the heavenly part of you point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't
Mm-hmm.
understand why your family was fighting or why that fighting was going on,
Yep.
and that that's interesting because uh, we think, okay, well, how do I put it? We don't that we might have that perspective from there and
Yeah.
feel that, but from what I remember in my experiences also out of bodies is that we don't even see that, we don't even have any awareness of that kind of negativity. Does that make sense?
Totally. Especially in this life, we don't understand it at all. We're just in the
Right.
moment, in everything. But I was totally pushed out because I wasn't done. I
Yeah.
It wasn't like Jesus called me back. It wasn't that I wanted to go back. I wanted to explore this house. I wanted to see who this mother was. Um, I was literally reading her
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, okay, she has a good heart, but she's stressed out, and she works hard. What
Mm-hmm.
else? I'm thinking about who she is, and then that's when I heard these people. I didn't even know who they were at the time, but they were clearly my sisters,
Yeah.
and they were kind of arguing with each other, and it interrupted my mother. And when her concentration was off those dishes and she looked to them to try to resolve the situation, I'm like, oh, what's happening? I get pushed out, and now I'm out on the
Yeah.
street with Jesus. So it
Yeah.
happened quick. So it's almost like our light energy can't tolerate that negativity. We get pushed out in some way.
Right.
I
And
don't know.
that,
All I can say is how it happened. Like I'm not gonna say, oh, this causes whatever. You know what I mean? I'm just saying
yeah.
what happened to me.
Right. And it when you think about it like that, that makes sense in my mind anyway too. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that that's part of this realm. And
Yes,
that's the
absolutely.
illusion that we all talk about, and that's the well, friction, I guess you could say, of this lower realm,
Mhm.
and the emotional stuff that we bring in and that we have here. But the higher realms, like you said, can't tolerate
Yeah.
it. Like he said,
Yeah.
there are no tears in heaven.
That's right. And
It's
he even said, I said, what happened? And he said that it happens sometimes, talking about family fighting,
okay.
because he's always to the point.
Yeah.
And so he just said it happens sometimes, and I was like, geez. And I literally was thinking, I hope it doesn't happen to me and I don't do it. It's almost like I forgot everything that happened, everything I had just seen with my future life. I must have, because I flew with Jesus and it was so cool. It's all I ever want to do again. Like, it was just so cool.
I hear you.
Ah,
I guess we just got to finish our mission here. Finish our mission. Yeah, I try to
yeah,
say
that's right.
finish our
Mm,
mission. That's how I see
mm-hmm.
it too. Finishing our mission. Like you said, I'm on a mission.
Yes.
I'm on a mission. And
Oh, yes.
that's how I've felt ever since my memory started coming back. And now I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I understand it now. It's my
Yes.
mission. You know, some people think